Good afternoon.
Oh,
This is Ian Mckellen, and Ian is, we're convening here because um, you, Ian, worked with Mike many moons ago, I know, and I've been doing a series of talks with Mike, and inevitably his time at the National came up, and we had a whole long section about that. And of course, he talked about you, and without being overduly flattering, he just said what a pleasure it was to work with you. And I understood, not from Mike, but from other people, that you actually quite enjoyed working with him. So,
oh,
uh, but maybe I'm wrong. And
no, you're not.
and one of the things that Mike did say to me, and this is going to go on record, is, do not, I don't want a hagiography from other people talking about me. I want people to be honest. I want people to be straight about what they felt about the work that they did with me. And that's fantastic because I think we ought to honor that.
Yes.
Um, so,
I'd be very hard put to find anything negative to say about.
oh, okay, all right.
I'd been in the National Theatre Company when it was run by Peter Hall on the South Bank, in a number of plays. He decided to divide the responsibilities for providing the repertoire at the National in all three theatres amongst various groups. I think there were five of them, all led by directors. But he asked me if I would be in charge of planning three productions, one for each theatre, with the same group of actors. And I said I would do that if I could do it with Edward Petherbridge, another veteran of the National Theatre under Laurence Olivier, with whom I'd been involved in the Actors Company in the early 70s. That was a group which was run by the actors who selected the plays they would do, where they would do them, who would direct them, who would design them, how much they would be paid, which was the same for everybody. And having enjoyed that over 2 or 3 years, I couldn't imagine trying to produce again without Edward firmly at my side. So he agreed to that, and we stuck to the rules, which other directors didn't. We said, yes, we can manage with 15 actors, but it will mean, as we're doing large cast plays, we began with The Duchess of Malfi, directed by Philip Prowse. It meant that, and then we did a double bill at the Olivier Theatre, directed for the first time by a woman, never happened before, at the National, Sheila Hancock. We did Real Inspector Hound, which was directed by the author, Tom Stoppard, and Sheila directed The Critic. And then we arrived in the small theatre, then called the Cottesloe, and that's where we invited Mike Alfreds to join us. And I think he was pleased to do it because there was a company already in place, and other directors agreed that to have some major responsibility of the production done by the actors who were going to be in it eased the passage for the director. Well, I didn't quite know what we were in for. I'd admired Mike's productions with what was his company called?
Shared experience.
Shared Experience. What a wonderful title for a company. But I didn't know how those productions had been achieved. We managed, I think, as producers, Ted and I, to give Mike what he wanted, which was 14 weeks rehearsal. That's quite, most plays are rehearsed in 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks. Particularly at the National, if the actors are involved in other productions, then you can't rehearse flat out every single day. But over 14 weeks, Mike felt he could do his method. And that's where I was introduced to it. Well, I'm sure he's talked to you at length about the method, but it was one that immediately appealed to me because it solves so many problems. How do you learn your lines? First question everybody always asks a professional actor. Well, Mike's answer to that was you learn it not at home, but in rehearsal. By constantly repeating, not repeating, but reinvestigating speeches, short and long, over and over again. The words seem to just slip into the head. Now, the problem of always for a production is how do you turn a group of actors into a company, relying on each other and the service of the play? Well, we already had a company in place, and we'd done 3 other plays, so we felt we knew each other well. We liked each other. There hadn't been any arguments as far as I can remember now. And Mike was able to take advantage of that and lead us. I've always been dependent on a director. I didn't go to drama school. I don't have a personalized method of acting. And I've always gone along with whatever a director wanted. But Mike's method was, of course, it wasn't what he wanted, but it was what we would want collectively. And I remember the thrill of very early in rehearsal when we were concentrating on the character I was playing, Leparkin. At one point, he invited the cast, knowing now as much about Leparkin as he or I did, because we talked about it and read the relevant passages in the play. He invited the actors to do a mime of the character, to be the character and go around the room doing something. And suddenly I was sitting next to the director watching. My 14 friends in the company all begin to understand how difficult it would be for them to play Leparkin, and perhaps difficult for me. I just felt I'd somehow come home, and everything I'd always cared about a company had been planned by Mike. It wasn't, nothing was left to chance. It was, you could do anything in rehearsal once you were following the basic instructions of where to concentrate. And out of every single rehearsal, something illuminating emerged, either for oneself or for the group or for the individuals. And this was because Mike had made it happen by the method. It wasn't so much what his comments on our work, it was the work itself, which sprang out of the group. Well, that's wonderful for Chekhov, where there are no small parts. You know, every part in Chekhov is worth playing. And there we were. We didn't understudy each other at the cottage, I think, because if somebody was ill and couldn't appear, then the performance was postponed. But it didn't suit everybody. One wonderful old timer, Roy Kinnear, very famous television comedian, but very, very adept and a wonderful storyteller. And he did some of the funniest acting as Piszczek I've ever seen. But it sprang out of his own ingenuity and not really from Mike's methods. And Roy was too sweethearted to ever sulk, but he kept quiet in rehearsals and got on with it in his own way. But somehow the group seemed to be able to cope with that. More seriously, Eleanor Bron playing Varia, the character that my character falls in love with, couldn't understand this new method. Her method was to work at home, decide what she wanted to do, and bring that to rehearsal. It had served her well in the past, and she was reluctant to let go of that. But I think everybody else like me, was released by the new approach of examining the play from every aspect, and so when you came to do it in performance, you were reliant not on a set of moves. We were never given any moves. They were improvised every performance, and out of that came a freshness every single night. So he then solved that other big problem of acting: is how do you do it the same every night? Well, the answer is you don't. Don't even try. You're concentrating in the moment for tonight's audience, the shared experience that you will have with them. And that suited me. I don't know whether I was a bit too enthusiastic and deliberately made things different every night. You'd come into a scene and not know where you were going to sit. And it was a question of status amongst the group as to whether anyone moved out of their chair to allow you to sit, or whether you ended up sitting on the ground or leaning against something. I loved that improvisation, and perhaps took too much advantage of it. I don't know. The other crucial element to Mike's production was that he saw every single performance. That's very unusual. And he was there not to tell you, you're not doing it as we arranged. On the contrary, he would say, the depth of emotion in that scene began too high, you had nowhere to go, or you trundled along on the bottom and you never lifted the scene to the emotional heights it needed. It was always a reaction to what you had done rather than telling you what to do. And I found that energizing too. And I felt so free. And we were rewarded with some of the best reviews for the company, for a group that I've ever read. And I think Peter Hall might have been a little bit embarrassed that in his own absence, he was busy doing work outside the National Theatre, whilst these groups functioned behind, that we had established a National Theatre company, not of very famous actors, but very accomplished actors, and under a director who directed, pointed us in the right direction. Nothing tyrannical about it, nothing you must do it like this. Always find the character inside yourself and present as every single aspect of the character, if you can. Well, I could go on and on and on. It changed my whole approach to acting, and I've tried to encourage other directors to follow Mike Alfreds' methods. It doesn't suit them all, if any, because Mike's work is based on so much experience, and I think with an intention to devise a method in which plays of any sort could be organized.
Ian, there's always a danger with that word method, because of course, Mike himself would say, he isn't attached. I hope I know I'm not getting him wrong here. To the method acting that was going.
I see. No, I'm not referring to that at all.
Yeah,
no.
I mean, he has a load of techniques, doesn't he? That he brings. Can I ask you a very specific question about you? And I'm interested to hear that you say you took some of this work into later stuff that you did. Did you understand before or when you worked with Mike what an objective was, what an intention? Did you know all that stuff before you came to Mike?
All new to me, all new to me, but instantly understandable. I didn't have to keep saying, I don't know what you mean. It was perfectly obvious what you mean, because the exercises were very simple. one of the most illuminating approaches he had, if you don't want to use the word method, was to say in the middle of rehearsal, right, today we will play a scene or an act or the whole play with a simple intention at the back of our minds, waiting to come forward whenever it was appropriate. And so we would do a number of run-throughs like with a concentration on religion or money or the weather. It just meant that, probably with some exaggeration, you'd become terribly aware of money, and Cherry Orchard is very much about money, who's got it, who's losing it, who, in the case of Pishik, literally lost it. He can't find the money about his person. And it allows you to discover something about money that you wouldn't ever have thought of by reading the text or talking about it. It happened in the performance. Now, you would then have that knowledge about your character's relationship with money, which you could plunder, use, nod towards in a performance. And if you'd also had a day when you concentrated on another character in the play, and everyone got their chance, everyone saw all the scenes that they were in played by the other actors with one's own character as their center of attention. It meant that you didn't have to express character and story by moves given to you by a director who was arranging stage pictures to tell the story. It was all the information was inside oneself and could bubble up if necessary. There was nothing that we didn't know about the characters and about each other's characters. That was the method it made acting so easy.
Really?
You didn't sit at home writing an essay about your character and then trying to somehow inhabit it. You were not critical of your character. You were just trying to become your character. It was up to the audience to decide whether you were behaving foolishly or not. So we were not commenting on the characters. We were trying to be them. And that gives the audience something to do. If you're in a production in which everything is fixed and labeled, as it were, with amazing effects, well, it might be very telling, but it's a lazy way of theatre going. A better way is just to sit in front of this group of actors telling you a story and have your own reaction to it. That's the fun of going to the theatre. And the shared experience method actually played to that.
Fantastic. I mean, he does talk about some blissful moments when an audience member, when he would be doing a show and somebody said, oh, this was so sad, or this was so funny, or this was that, or this was that. That character was horrible, this character was wonderful, you know, and that idea, I think, which is at the heart, one of the hearts of his work, is let the play be there in all its glory without a director telling you what to think, which is exactly what you're saying, I think.
Yes, the only time I felt he went against it was through a matter of logistics. You have to decide what the set is going to be like, the scenery, because it has to be made, and decisions about that are made in advance of the production, the rehearsals. Ideally, I suppose, the settings, the style of the costumes would emerge during a rehearsal period as everything else emerged. And then if you had the time and the money, then the costumes and sets would be made in accordance with your discoveries. But that doesn't work when the National Theatre, you have to follow their routine. And so before we went into rehearsal, Mike had decided on the sort of impressionistic setting that he would have. And I thought that was at odds with the rehearsing of it. But in the end, it was all right, but I could imagine that in some cases it wouldn't be all right, and that changes would have to be made, and that's not always practical.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I couldn't fault it. I remember seeing another Chekhov production of Mike's, The Seagull, and at one point, a book was inadvertently knocked on the floor or dropped. I can't remember now. Well, an audience couldn't help noting that, and this actor audience would sense that a mistake had occurred and that book was never intended to fall. I think that was probably the case when it fell to the ground, but it was shortly afterwards picked up by somebody who then looked at this book and started to read it, or at least decide what it was and who it belonged to. And other characters did the same. And the book became a part of the scene, but it was all improvised in front of me. And so at the end, I couldn't say, no, that book was never intended to fall. It looked as if it was an elaborate piece of direction that had been rehearsed and appeared fresh, but it was fresh, that's the point. And that would happen night after night. Nothing can go wrong in a Mike Alfreds production because there is nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing fixed, nothing set. Your only duty is to arrive on the set from the same position every night, every performance, on cue, and onto the stage you go, and thereafter you are in the moment. And together, everything will be, the moves will be improvised, not the insides, because you have so much inside you, so much to play with, that it's possible to be free in the rehearsal. And that spontaneity, an audience can't help but respond to, as I did when the book fell in
Yes.
The Seagull.
And the danger, you see, with that sense of talking about that freedom is that it is about the actors indulging themselves, whereas actually I think certainly all the productions I saw of Mike, it wasn't really about them indulging themselves. It was about all that knowledge, all that work that had already gone on inside you gave you this most incredible sort of scaffolding, didn't it?
Mm.
For you to be...
You felt very safe. And there was often actors feel, or this one does, that, oh my God, I've got that big scene coming up and I'm going to have to reach some special quality, and that shriek I did at the end of the scene and the way I banged the door and exited, I must hold on to these. Well, in holding on to them, of course, you exaggerate them and they become inappropriate. But there was nothing. You were never trying to repeat with Mike. It was also always about discovery. And when I saw the last performance, I think, of his Private Lives, Noel Coward, the actors did a wonderful chase around the set, and at one point fell over the sofa into each other's arms. And I congratulated Mike, who of course was at the performance, as he was at everyone, on that particular moment. And he said, they've never done it before. This was the last night. And I was picking on something that I thought was central and special to the production. It had never been there before. That's live theatre, live for the audience and live for the actors, of course. No wonder Mike wants to go and see it. And of course, can be scathing if what you're producing is dead theatre. Dead theatre is theatre that repeats itself, that doesn't discover in the moment, but tries to remember something that was done in the past. That sets you off in the wrong direction altogether.
So can I ask you, have you noticed that your work as an actor has changed as a consequence of
Totally. Utterly.
Can you give us a couple of examples? I mean, I'm thinking about, when you're going to do a film, Are you utilizing all of the stuff that you worked on with Mike when you're doing that, or is it purely in theatre that you?
Oh, I see. When we were doing Lord of the Rings, I was the old wizard Gandalf, and Ian Holm was playing Bilbo, my young friend. Everything seems young to Gandalf because he's 7,000 years old. But Ian said to me one day, as we were working through this scene with the director, he said, I just should warn you that on each of the takes, and a take is there might be you might be filmed in close-up 10 or times, and then do the scene from another point of view. So you will do the scene from any number of angles and any number of times. He said, I won't be doing it the same each time. He said, I think my job as an actor is to present to the director, the film director, as much information as I can to discover in front of the camera everything I know about the character, and it'll be different each time. And then it'll be up to the director subsequently to piece together what he wants to create my performance. Not a million miles from Mike Alfreds' method, but in the theatre, I have to warn actors, I won't be doing the same every night. I never could in the past, and I feel now it would be wrong to try to do that now or in the future. So most actors respond to that, understand it, and Mike Alfred's name always comes up if there's a discussion. But of course, if a play has not been rehearsed with the rigor that Mike brings to his rehearsals over a long period of time, then it's very difficult for everybody to be improvising in the moment, and there may be some special effect that the director has designed which you don't want to disturb. I remember another director in the season in which we did the Cherry Orchard of the National, Philip Prowse, who did not see every performance. In fact, he didn't even see the first night. He left it at the dress rehearsal and said, up to you now, another approach. But he did come back after some months to see the production in front of an audience, and came into my dressing room as the producer and said, your actors are ruining my lighting.
Oh.
Well, you see how contrary that is to Mike Alfred's method.
Oh boy.
And so there we are. If actors can cope with the dangerous ride of a Mike Alfred's rehearsal period, they know they're doing it because Mike loves actors and loves acting, and is constantly trying to see how it can become better and deeper and richer and more true. He's on your side.
Yeah.
Some directors you don't always feel are on your side because they've planned it all at home. They've worked it all out in advance. They arrive at the first rehearsal, many distinguished directors, with the moves all written down in their notebook. Yeah. Well, in Mike Alfreds, the moves are never written down. There aren't any moves. Nothing's fixed.
I mean, he has done a vast amount of homework, and he expects you as an actor to do a vast amount of homework even before you get to rehearsal, in terms of all those lists and all those other things that I don't know if he did it with you, but he does it.
Yes, of course. And those lists, what does my character do? What does my character say about himself? What does he say about all the other characters? What is his main intention in life, as opposed to the moment of the scene? They're terribly sensible questions for an actor to ask of himself, and in whatever way the play is being rehearsed, those questions still are well worth answering, and all my scripts are full of those Mike Alfred's lists.
Oh, how interesting! So
as you write down the answers to these questions, of course, you're learning the lines without realizing it.
course, that's right.
Mm.
And so I mean, up until Mike Alfreds, of course, you were a highly distinguished actor. You know, fantastic performances. A lot of this was your instinct that you were working from. You know, you're intelligent. You had wonderful physicality and a good voice and all those things. And then you start working with Mike. I mean, you're saying that you changed, but I mean, did you become a better actor? Do you think, as a consequence?
I think I became a different actor, yes, and probably a better. Look, I've worked with some amazing directors. Tyrone Guthrie, the doyen of Shakespearean productions. I worked with him happily playing Ophidius in Coriolanus. He taught me to dare, to risk, to not to live as fully in the moment as possible. But he was very good at stage settings and crowds on the stage, and there were rules that you had to very happily obey because you knew you were adding to the effect. Working with Trevor Nunn as Macbeth and Romeo, he taught me about the detail that can be found in Shakespeare's words, details which are often direct as to the actor, as to not only what he should be thinking and feeling, but how he should speak. Indications in the script as to where there should be a pause, for example, or not. And his imagination was so strong that even as he was imagining what the production might look like, he was helping the individual actors to discover their part in it all. So I had no complaints about many of the directors I've worked with, but it was just this approach was not about the director, but was actually all about the acting, it seemed to me. So yes, I don't think I've ever played a part when I haven't thought at some point in rehearsal, I'm never going to be able to do this. But with Mike Alfreds, you're not thinking about the aim in view. You're thinking about the exercise you've been given that day. And without you knowing it, because it's a good exercise, you have learned something and discovered something which you retain inside and may pull out during one performance if it seems appropriate. So I try to hold on to that, even though I might be working and have done since with directors who are very dictatorial for your own good.
I love the thought. I love the thought, and I think you're absolutely right that even though there is, and I hope he'll of course he'll listen to this, but you know, there's a bit of you know, he's a hard taskmaster. Mike is. He makes his actors work really, really hard. But I do think that he has the most incredible admiration for actors. And I think that's shown through all the talks that we've had. You know, we've talked for 6 months basically, and you know, he really not reveres is not quite the right word, but he admires actors hugely, and I think that has shown in the way in which the work I've seen of his. You know, and I remember seeing Cherry Orchard at the Cottesloe with you and Sheila Hancock, and you know, just being blown away by it. It was absolutely wonderful. Funnily enough, I saw another production of Cherry Orchard at the Gare du Nord, you know, the theatre, theatre, which was also absolutely stunning and revealing, even though it was in French, and my French is very schoolboyish. You know, it was absolutely as clear as a bell, just like your one was. And this is one of the things I've always noticed about Mike's productions, is that somehow they're pellucid. They absolutely shine through with the clarity of what people are about and what they're after. And
yes, I mean, I did wonder whether what it would be like doing Shakespeare with Mike Alfreds, because the work we did on the Cherry Orchard was all about understanding the character you were playing and the other characters with him and their relationships. And when you come to do Shakespeare, you might find that the central speech that you have as an actor is not spoken to another actor, but is spoken directly to the audience as a soliloquy. Where does the Mike Alfreds approach help you there? Well, he would have an answer because he's done Shakespeare, but not with me. But I think his method just absolutely suited Chekhov down to the ground. But whether it would with a writer of a different style, I don't know. But my admiration for him is such that I think it'll probably work, whatever he was doing. But it's very sympathetic to the writer, and of course we all know in the theatre the text, the play is the beginning and the end. It's all we have, and we must care for the way, the style of the writing and the storytelling, and it will be different from playwright to playwright, from play to play.
Sir Ian, I shouldn't have called you Sir Ian, but I can cut this, okay? I can cut this. I want to ask you a question that I might cut, okay? Because Mike has talked himself about how he kind of blew the National Theatre. You know, he had this fantastic production with you, and then he went in. Then he had the Littleton, and then he had the Olivier. And both those productions didn't succeed, and he felt he's been very honest about this. He's talked about this himself, and he said, you know, that maybe he overreached himself, maybe he made too many demands, you know, maybe he chose the wrong material, that he wasn't strategic, I think, is possibly what, I mean, I'm putting words into his mouth, but that's kind of what he was getting at when he was talking about it. And he said this is a failing that he's had throughout his life, that sometimes he's kind of just gone that little bit too far and then something has gone wrong. You know, that he could have played it a bit safer maybe, and stayed in.
Well, yes, he shouldn't beat himself up too much, and I don't know the details of what happened because I'd gone by when he had his own group at the National after the Cherry Orchard. But I've seen with other directors too. It's not easy to arrive at the National Theatre, which is run by usually a rather strong personality, in this case Peter Hall, and fit into the way that they run the theatre. Because half the time you're thinking, well, if I were running the National Theatre, I wouldn't be running it like this. There's some inert rivalry going on, which is very unhelpful to everybody. You know, I think there was a feeling with Philip Prowse that he wasn't respected enough, perhaps, by Peter Hall, and didn't understand the wonderful work he'd done up in Glasgow with others at the Citizens Theatre. And maybe Mike felt too that his track record was more than considerable, and he was arriving with something to teach the National Theatre about having a company, about how work is delivered of the highest possible quality. And if he felt that somehow the way the theatre was organized didn't help him, then I could understand that he might get, I can't ever see Mike on a high horse, but you know what I mean. So I don't think he should blame himself too much, but, and of course it also depends on the casting, whether you get the actors that you would like, and of course the material chosen is also important. It's as I say, I don't really know what went on.
Mm.
But typical of Mike, that he should be self-critical, analyze himself, because unless he's feeling confident, uh, not in his own imagination, but confident in the method, confident that the teaching side of directing is going well, then I can imagine you might get a bit wobbly.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. Okay. I think we're done.
Okay.
I get a feeling that we're done.
Well, I would just repeat myself really, but no, certainly working with Mike Alfred gave me a self-confidence, and a total renewal as an actor. And I hadn't joined the Mike Alfred's fan club. It wasn't that I thought he is the answer to everything. He is not, but his method is the answer to everything. And there have been other moments with other directors, actually, when I've learned something which has really set the vehicle into a new gear. Jonathan Mumby, when I was doing King Lear not long ago, said to me one day in rehearsal, I think you should try and surprise yourself. He was suggesting, I think, that I was organizing things a bit too much in advance, and really live in the moment. I'm sure Mike Alfreds would agree. Surprise yourself. Don't know what's going to happen. King Lear doesn't know what's going to happen. Why should the actor playing King Lear know what's going to happen? And preparing Hamlet at the moment, I find that note absolutely, I lean on it all the time. It's revelatory. And it was like that with Mike, and hugely grateful.
It's very interesting. Are you going to play Hamlet?
Yes.
So isn't that interesting? Because we're slightly off piste here, but Mike is looking at Hamlet at the moment. And
Is he?
yes, we just had a conversation about it, about the extraordinary speech that Ophelia has about Hamlet coming in,
Yes.
ungartered and looking over his shoulder, and
Yes.
I think Mike is sort of kind of he's going, this is an extraordinary play, and it is. I mean, it's just so rich and so complex.
It's a bugger of a play, because all the texts we have are in themselves inadequate. I think that, I don't know, you have to create a play out of all the material that exists. Mm. We're just going for the story, which means you can't cut Fortinbras, which is an easy cut to make, but you rob the play of the ideal man, at least Hamlet thinks he is, in some sense, and oh yes, but it's wonderful material. We're going to film it, actually, because we couldn't do it in the theatre, which was the plan. We decided under COVID conditions we would film it when we start next week in the theatre Royal Windsor, which becomes our set. It won't become Elsinore ever, but we will do stuff on the stage, but a lot in the corridors and the dressing rooms. Get up on the roof when we see the ghost with Windsor Castle in the background, and the casting is just as the Theatre Royal Windsor is the place where it's being shot, but doesn't really look anything like Elsinore. So too with the person playing Hamlet, he's going to tell you the story, but he is 82, and ignore that or be amused by that, or I don't know what your reaction would be. It's just a fact that the actor on this occasion is older than he normally is, and the race of the actors has not been taken into account. It's their inner quality, and you know, you're getting back to Mike Alfreds, aren't you? It's all what's inside. Mm-hmm.
Fantastic to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Well, no, thank you, and what a good thing you've done, because he's such a good talker, and you immediately understand what he's saying. I've looked at one of his books on acting, which are not easy to read. Well, they're guidebooks, aren't they? Really, rather than thrillers. But I think this is going to be a wonderful resource for people.
Yeah, I hope so.
And I don't know whether he has over the years trained other people to do this method. I don't remember an assistant director.
Ian, he has a lot of people who have. He's, you know, even now as we speak, he's teaching.
Is he? Yes.
He's doing all these Zoom things with Berlin, with Melbourne, with, you know, this company, that company.
Is
and
he?
He has a lot of people who have kind of worked with him, worked as assistants to him, and so, you know, as you said at some point, you know, I mean, his career has also been a teaching career as well as being.
Oh yes.
And even within the directing work, it's a lot of that is teaching as well in its own way.
Yes. Of course, directors know nothing about other directors. They never work with them. It's if you want to find out what a director's like, you go to the actors, or anybody who's been in the team, but not another director, because they don't know. And in fact, I mean, I think it was Trevor Nunn who said to me one day, "What does or was it Richard Eyre? What does Mike Alfreds do in rehearsal?" Well, you must come and have a look.
And interestingly, Mike would be very happy for that because he's always been collegiate in that sense. You know,
yes.
he would not be precious about somebody coming into his rehearsals.
No.
As long as they were respectful and they, you know, they focused and concentrated.
Yes.
And that's been the case. I mean, you know, when he was working at a drama school, he would go and watch the movement classes. He'd watch the voice classes. You know, he'd want to integrate all these different aspects. And you're absolutely right that directors, you know, where do they learn? Who do they learn off? Actors learn off directors, and they learn off other actors, don't they? And they have that wonderful kind of, you know, troubadour quality, but a director tends to be up in his turret.
It's the other good, wonderful thing about working with Mike is it doesn't depend on inspiration. It doesn't depend on the personal brilliance and imagination of an actor or a designer or the director who, I know what Hamlet's all about. I will do it. Everyone will wear scarlet. That's one way of doing it, but it doesn't really lead anywhere because it's just been a spark in someone's imagination. Mike's a plodder. He's a workman. He's got a craft. He's building something from scratch. He doesn't know how it's going to end up. It's less artistry than carpentry, really.
And
he gives you all the tools, and you pick them all up, and off you run.
And you know, one of the paradoxes with Mike is that right at the beginning of his directing career, he was doing summer stock, and he was putting on plays in a week. You know, so the idea of blocking, as we call it, you know, is perfectly fine. I mean, he's got all that craft.
Yes,
You know, if he chose to, he could block something in a week.
that's true. Yes, 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 yes.
So it's not as if he's gone, oh well, I don't quite know what I want to do. As you say,
No, so it's his gift to the actor to deny himself that power. He hands the power over to you the whole time. And the only time you lose his respect or he looks disappointed, those eyes look rather sad, is when you've let yourself down. You never feel you're letting him down.
yeah, yeah, that's wonderful.
Well, but you can't talk to Roy Kinnear any longer, but you could talk to Eleanor Braun, and she might give you another story altogether about Mike. I know she didn't enjoy it. I think she felt, and I can imagine people feeling, this is too dangerous. It's too exposing. I'm being asked to do more than I need to do. I can see that line is funny, and I know that the way to say it so the audience will laugh, that's enough. I don't want to start delving into the pain behind the humor, you know. But
Interesting. Yes, I mean, you know, I was sort of hoping that in a sort of slightly dark way that there might be something negative that you'd that you'd be saying, because of course, as I said to you at the very beginning, he does not want us to be hagiographic about his work. You've been massively positive, and so was Pam. You know, and of course, you know, we know that Mike is tough. And when, like you said, I mean, Pam said, when Mike can be tough on actors as well. He can, you know, he can say, look, you're not playing your objective here. It's not clear what your through line or whatever. You know?
yes, yes, yes.
Whereas some people might pussyfoot around those things.
Yes. No, it's not for everybody, but it's for me. I can't fault it, really.
Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed that chat. And if you did, would you press the like button and also the subscribe button? That would be great. And if you wanted to be given alerts to when the next one is happening, just press the bell button. If you want to put any comments or any questions underneath here, underneath the video, please do. And at some point I will re-interview Mike, as it were, and put some of these questions to him. So I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.